Good morning. It's great to see you all here. It's a fantastic talk there from Zoe. I've certainly enjoyed it. It's a brilliant talk. What I'd like to do today is we've talked a lot about much more and much less. I think that's only going to continue, but what I wanted to talk to you about is how the outsourcing market has really had to address that type of an issue 4 or 5 times over the last 15 years. And I want to show you what's happened as a result of that. So we're going to talk about why the world's different. We're going to look back at outsourcing. We're going to see where we are today. And there's 2 elements I just want to focus on right at the end. So we all know a lot has changed over the last few years. A lot in terms of the political landscape, how we think about the world. The language we're using is changing. We're talking about big society. We're talking about mutualization, all these different words that we didn't even think about. And socially, things like the way we communicate with each other in terms of iPods, laptops, all that sort of thing. It's all changing. Now, you've seen this graph probably. Government spending a year ago, 20% less probably in a year or two's time. So a rapid change in what's available to all of us and the resources that we have. Now, going back to the 80s in facilities outsourcing, what you had was the majority of services being performed in-house. And the clickers stopped working. Here we go. And in the 80s, we had Margaret Thatcher there, and she started to encounter cost-push inflation. We had inflation above 10%, we had oil prices shooting up, wages were rising, and what that meant is the economy faced a real crisis. So essentially, the market had to change. And what we saw a big shift of people doing things in-house to then outsourcing predominantly single services, so things like security, catering, M&E, pest control, etc. And the typical savings, as you can see there, were around 15 to 20%. And those largely came from reorganizing the way the services were delivered and just doing things a little bit differently and having people that were specialists in providing those services. Now, that happened pretty much during the 80s, and by the time you got to the end of the 80s, we had another problem. We had the 80s boom and bust. We had the economic miracle. We had Lawson saying that life was going to carry on brilliantly. Housing prices were shooting up every year. We thought that 5% was a normal rate of GDP growth, and we were deregulating the financial markets like crazy. And then we started to get high inflation. But this time it was being demand-pull inflation. So because of the vast amount of demand, we were getting inflation shooting up. Guess what? Another recession hit us. We had to change. And then the clients were looking at different things. They were saying, OK, we've done some single service outsourcing. What's the next trick? And the next trick really was to put things together in terms of bundles. They're saying, if we put together 2 or 3 services, how can we be more efficient? And the answer is lots of ways. You can have people multitasking. You can multi-skill people. You can start to reduce your management. And the management reductions weren't just on the service provider side. They were also on the client side as well. And typically, again, you can get 10 to 15% reduction from just going to that sort of a model. And clients were looking for standardized provision and the application of best practice across different service lines. Now, not everybody went for bundled. Lots of people were very happy at single service. People still do things in-house. This is a journey that people take depending on what's right for their business or for their organization. And then around 2000, we had another impetus. We had the dot-com bust, where all of a sudden everyone lost their confidence. We had the Y2K issue, and it created, again, stress in the markets. And what happened then? Well, over the next 10 years after that, we started to see more integrated facilities management. People were saying, yeah, it's okay that we've outsourced, it's okay that we've got bundles of things, but now we want to get the real benefits from it. So they started to combine things in larger, broader packages, looking for that integrated delivery, importantly, integrated management information systems, so that a client could see exactly what was going on across a whole range of services. And they were also looking for additional things like consultancy, supply chain management, and project management. And that produced, typically, again, a 5 to 10% improvement in cost savings. So you can see the cumulative results of these can be quite dramatic. Now, where are we going to go now? What's next for us? We've now got the back end of the Brown boom and bust. It sounds very similar, if you look at it, to where we were in the 80s. House prices were doing great. We all thought growth could carry on forever. We thought we had an economic miracle, but we didn't, and we've struggled. Now, what is it going to look like over the next 5 years? I can't predict everything, but it looks to me as if we're going to go to the next stage, which is starting to integrate things at a strategic level. And you can see here, we're starting to talk about the technical solutions that you can provide to your clients, the BPO linked in with it. People are looking at asset investment. They want partners that can contribute to the actual cost of the way they do things and to invest in the services that are provided. And energy and carbon and sustainability are really important now and very high on everyone's agenda. And the savings that can come from that are somewhere between 5 and 20%, depending on how far you go. So the message I've got here is that outsourcing isn't the only answer to the fact that we have less resources and less budgets, but it is an answer, and it's one of the things that you could consider as part of the way you approach the challenges that we all have. Just want to briefly touch on strategic outsourcing. This is where you can combine all three areas of facilities management, property management, and asset investment together. The reason this is important is that too often departments, what they do is they operate very much in isolation. So we talked about that before. And you get a property strategy established separate from a facility strategy and separate from a project management strategy. If you bring them together, bring the best bits and the best thinking together, then you definitely achieve more in the way of efficiency and obviously cost savings. And that's really the important thing there. Different business models are starting to be produced as well. This government is talking a lot about mutualisation. What that really means is that they want the private sector, the public sector, and also other organisations such as charities to work together to allow people to feel more empowered about the services that are provided. Now, there are various different models, and we believe firmly that the actual ownership of an element of a business really has an important factor in how well people operate, how fired up they are to come to work every morning, how they jump out of bed in an excited way to really produce for the organisation that they work in. In terms of strategic outsourcing, we go through a process that we call rationalise, optimise and maximise. And you can see there, we work very much, first of all, on rationalising supply chains, both internal and external. We look at the operational structures that apply in an organisation and the specifications for service delivery. Too often, the reason that you can't drive efficiency and cost reduction out of a service is because it's very prescriptive in terms of what you're supposed to be providing. You don't get something that says, oh, by the way, clean the room. You say, I want you to come in and perform a particular task in terms of using a vacuum cleaner, using your specific things. And they tell you how often you've got to do it and how long you've got to spend doing it. That's not the way to generate efficiency. It's really looking at the overall process and seeing what's appropriate. The next phase really is optimise. Once you've got your basic services organised properly, is to look at things like energy efficiency. Energy is a cost to every organisation. The way in which you provide your services affects the way you consume your energy. For example, anyone that's driven through Canary Wharf or gone past it in the middle of the night, you'll see all the lights on, a lot of the lights on. What's happening? It's just cleaners going round. I mean, why do the cleaners have to clean at night? They don't. They can do it during the day. And then you save enormously on your energy. That's just a very simple example. One of our clients, we have security officers who go around and literally, all they do is turn lights off and turn off PCs when they go around the building. Significant savings to be had for very, very simple things. The other thing is the management information and management structure. We find that a lot of times when you're doing a contract for clients, they're telling you what information they want, very much based on what they'd had before and then adding to it. Now, going back to first principles, it very much aligns with what Zoe was saying, is what do people actually want to find out about? If you can establish that, and then you can produce systems to generate that information, you can, again, generate more efficiency. Then maximising. Property strategy is very important within our industry because as the costs come down for government, the reality is that there is going to be less property occupied. So what is government, and it's also the private sector as well, what are they going to do with those buildings? We've got one client who has, they have 40% of their buildings are currently empty. And what are they going to do with that? Now, that is something that is very important to everyone because it's very expensive. So it's coming up with innovative ways to support their clients to dispose of, reuse of, or be creative with the ways that you address those property challenges.